What may, bring it on. I'm gonna love it.
Welcome to LDS Unmarried Life, a podcast for single members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints who find themselves single either because they're divorced, widowed, or not yet married. There is no affiliation with the church. This podcast can be found on AnnetteTalks.com, YouTube, iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Play, and now iHeartRadio. Right. Before we get into the topic, I wanted to let you all know that the book that Steve Smith and I wrote, Dating After Divorce, an LDS Survival Guide, is now ready for you to purchase. So you can find it either on AnnetteTalks.com or Amazon.com, and you can get either the Kindle version or paperback. Also, if you like what you're hearing and you want to support me a little bit, I would love it if you would go to my Patreon page. That's patreon.com/Annette Talks. And you can contribute $2 a month, $10 a month, whatever you want. It helps to pay for the expenses that go along with the podcasting. And you will get access to some locked content. And if you do $20 a month, I will send you an autographed copy of my book. And I might even get Steve to sign it as well. Also, if you have a business and you want to sponsor this show, send me an email at AnnetteTalks.com, and we'll start a dialogue about that. All right, so today we are going to be talking about whether or not you're ever ready for a relationship and what that means. And before we start that, we're going to go around and introduce ourselves. And this is the biggest group I've ever had, so I'm going to do my best to keep them in line. They've all been warned. But we're going to go ahead and introduce ourselves, and then we will jump into the topic. So I'm first. My name is Annette Bybee. It's my podcast, obviously. 50. I've been divorced for 4 years. I have 3 girls, ages 10, 11, and 8, and I like dark chocolate. And then we'll go to Emily.
Okay. I'm Emily. I have 3 children, 11, 9, 8. I'm 42 and a half. My children beg me about that. My children tell everyone how old I am when we meet new people. Hi, this is my mom. This is her name. This is how old she is. So, fun times.
I'm Drew. I've been divorced about 4 years. I have 5 kids ranging in age from 14 to 35.
Hi, I'm Jennifer, and I'm 47. I've been divorced for 8 months, and I have 4 kids.
And Jennifer is new to the program, so
and
welcome.
I'm a newbie.
Yes.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Patty. I have been divorced 14 years. I have 2 children. I have a 21-year-old and a 17-year-old.
Great.
I am Jocelyn. I'm 41, and I have a 19-year-old who'll be going to college in September.
Yay.
This is Steve Smith. You've heard me before. 2 kids. My oldest daughter's on a mission in Utica, New York. My son lives with his mother in Utah. 435-830 435-224-3850 if you want to get in touch with me.
If you want to put your phone number out there, you should really memorize it.
Yeah, sorry. Another one caught me off guard.
8675.
That's my friend's number.
All right, and another McNewbie over here.
I'm McDreamy. I'm 39 years old, never married. There you go.
And we're going to try and remember that name, McDreamy.
I don't have any
Yes.
kids either.
Great.
I was kind of waiting on the marriage thing.
That's a good idea.
I'm Kristen, never married, no children, and I'm a millennial.
All
We
right.
won't get more specific than that. on my
Oh,
age.
you're not going to tell us your age.
No.
All right, that's your prerogative. All right, great. So what we did was I was actually sent this article by 2 different people that told me we should talk about it. And so there's an article I'm going to link to on the show notes that says, how do you know if you're ready for a relationship? And so just to give you a little bit of a summary of what the article kind of says, it basically says that it used to be that, like back in the 50s and before then, people would get married so they could like grow up, right? That's the next stage in their life. They're going to finish high school, maybe college, and get married so they can move on. But now it's kind of flipped so that people basically say, well, once I've got my college degree, once I've got my career settled, once I've got financially stable, whatever, then I'm ready for a relationship. And so this author talks to different people who are at various stages and have talked about when they felt ready or when they haven't felt ready. And so I thought it would be good to talk about what you all think about that as far as when are you ready? What does it mean to be ready? One of the things that I want to get out there right away is one of the author quotes Schwartz Gottman of the Gottman Institute we all know about. This is someone who's an expert in relationships. And the quote that sticks with me and from him is one time Schwartz Gottman emphasizes that people will not be ready for a new relationship when they've just suffered a loss, such as death of a partner or a divorce. So that's like the one time that this person, Schwartz Gottman, says that you're not ready yet if you've just suffered a loss. So that tells you that he basically is saying that any other time you probably are ready. So let's talk about that. Who has something to say about being ready or not ready?
I guess I can talk to
You
about
have to
that.
put your finger up, Jennifer.
I am so sorry.
All right, this is Jennifer. I'm going to try and remember to name you all because otherwise people that are listening won't know who's talking. Jennifer, yes.
So I'm one of the group that has not been divorced a long time. So being single is new to me. And I will say that I was ready and raring to go, I thought. And I did. I dated very shortly after my divorce. I had been in a marriage that it wasn't really a relationship, and what relationship was there died long before the divorce. And I thought, boy, I'm going to get out there and I'm ready to go. And I think I was a lot more vulnerable than I realized. And frankly, I dated more during the first couple of months than I have since. And I think part of that is this awareness that not everybody out there is who they say they are. And it's hard to open yourself up to someone when you're finding out that people aren't being honest and that you can't trust people right away necessarily. So I learned a lot of things from that, and but I can understand why people were advising me, oh, don't date, no one should, and I kind of think I believe them now.
Yeah, because you read my book, right? And that I had the similar experience because a lot of times you come out of a divorce and like if it was a really bad marriage for a long time, you're like, I'm free. I got to get out there and really date someone good now, right? I want to have some fun now. And then you get right out, because I did. Steve and I, when I was first divorced, we talked, and he's like, you're not ready. I'm like, yeah, I am. I got out there. And of course I discovered, no, I'm not, because you're just not. You're still figuring out who you are at that point as a single person as opposed to as this married person. And so, yeah, I did the same thing. I was dating 3 guys at once. And if you buy my book and read it, you can find out more to that story. So, let's see, Patty.
Okay. I would say it also depends on your priorities. Some people put their focus on getting married. Some people focus on their kids, their career, whatever have you. So in order to actually really date someone and get to know someone, you have to be willing to invest the time. So if you have small children at home, it's harder to invest that time because you're busy. If you're working and you're working long hours, it's hard to invest that time because you're busy. Been divorced for 14 years, and I think it just depends on where are your priorities at the moment, and they switch depending on your life as life happens.
Yes.
Yeah.
I agree with that. Jocelyn?
I would agree with that. I think too that I apologize, but in the time frame that I was listening to you speak, I forgot what I was going to say because I was like brooding on what you said. So I'll be back.
All right. Well, the comment that Patty just made reminded me of a quote from this article, and I wanted to find it real quick, but it talked about how there's always externals going on in your life that make you think you're not ready. But basically, a lot of times opportunities come along whether you're ready or not. And so one of the things, the article basically says that even if you wait until all your external circumstances are good, that you may miss opportunities. And they said even if you think you're good, like if you've got all the dots or all the boxes checked, right? Everything's all good in your life, and you're like, I'm relationship ready now, that you might not have one. Because there's no guarantee, which is the way I feel. I feel like I've been ready for the last few years, but there's no real relationship coming along. Yes, Jocelyn.
I think think it's pertinent. This is something that Judge Judy, or not Judge Judy, who was it? Dr. Laura Schleischer used to say, and it really resonated with me. I decided I was going to wait until my daughter was a lot older because, like, when her dad first left, there was probably a window of maybe 5 years where I thought, okay, maybe this could work, where I could marry somebody and she would be a part of the family and we would all be together. But she reached a point, and it was about probably like 10 or 11, where I realized that this wasn't going to work anymore. Like, that I couldn't just bring a person in and maybe start having more kids or whatever was going to happen. And for us to, like, having been part of a step family and seeing how that works out, that it was kind of done, and I was going to have to wait until after she graduated. That would be the best thing for her. And since she was my first, you see this actual discussion a lot on Facebook, she would have to be my first priority, because you know how, like, your kids, well, I didn't ask to be born. Well, it's true, they didn't. But she needed to be my first priority until she got older. And so now that she's like 18, 19, about her junior year in high school is when I started thinking, okay, it's okay to start really dating again.
Yeah, I have heard that. I remember Dr. Laura saying that. There's something about after the age of 10 or 11 that it's much more difficult for kids to accept a step parent. I think about that a lot because my oldest is 11. So it's like, okay, so if someone doesn't come along really soon, will I end up waiting until they're all 18? And so I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. It could be that someone could come along that they all really love and is really great for them. Todd, I'm going to let you go next. Oh, McDreamy.
McDreamy is here. Are we talking about being ready or finding the right person? Because I think that it's a different. There's a difference there, right? Like, if you're going along and you're telling yourself you're not ready, and you meet somebody who's amazing, then you may say, well, this isn't the right time, and miss out on a great opportunity. And I've been thinking about how that's applicable in business, in every circumstance, right? And so I just think there's a distinction there is having that mindset of saying, okay, I'm ready, I'm open, I'm looking for that, versus is this person the right person for me?
No, that's a really good point. And the part of the problem, and one of the things they talk about in the article, is that if you're saying you're not ready, then you're going to miss someone that comes along because you're saying you're not ready. Just to give away the end of the article, it basically says that people that see themselves as ready are much more likely to get out there, to take care of themselves physically, make themselves physically attractive to the opposite sex, more willing to look for people to date, more willing to accept dates, and more willing to commit longer in a relationship. So a lot of it's the mindset. And so if you tell yourself, and the other thing it says in there, which I think kind of gets to the crux of the whole thing, is that if you're saying you're not ready, is it really external things, or is it that you're afraid subconsciously of something that could come up? And that's one of the reasons why I did this 30-day bay recently, because I knew that there was stuff that I needed to work on, but I couldn't get into a stinking relationship to work on it. And so I put myself out there for 30 days with this relationship so I could allow that step to come up and work on it, because I wanted to be relationship ready, which is why, like third or fourth day, I said, this isn't really 30-day boot camp, or this isn't a 30-day bay, this is a 30-day relationship ready boot camp, because I wanted to make sure I was ready. And I didn't want any excuses, of I'm this or that. And so I put myself through that. And I don't think that I would say I'm 100% ready, but like the article says, nobody ever really is 100% ready. The stars just align. I'm going to let Drew go first because he had raised his finger over there. Yes, Drew.
Okay, thanks, Annette. I waited to date until I felt like I'd healed and just rediscovered myself after divorce. And I think that was a good decision, because then I felt confident going forward, dating. And that's one thing I learned in the article, too. It's great to hear a confirmation of that you feel more confident. And when you feel more confident, you're more committed to a relationship, putting yourself out there, being vulnerable, and finding someone. And then after that, it's a matter of when you meet someone. Luck, and it doesn't happen just right away. It happens on its own time.
Yes. Well, that's what the article says. A lot of it's just luck. So I want to go to Jocelyn next because no more
gone.
thought.
Yeah.
You covered it. All right, Emily.
So thank you. So I have two thoughts that come from the article about being ready and how do I be ready. I feel like the two things that were brought up in the article are one, someone was not really ready, but they went to a potluck with a friend, and it was they just met the most beautiful woman, and they're like, oh my goodness. And then about 3 months later, he said a few months later, he asked her out on a date, and then they became boyfriend girlfriend. So there again, expectation of timing, expectation of self. Sometimes situations just happen. And then the other one was when someone had recently divorced, they moved to a new area, and they felt the need to take a good, I think they said 6 months, to really like build their base again of girlfriends, career, not like getting everything ready, but just build their emotional base, their support system in that area, which I think is really important because you need to be able to bounce ideas off of people who are actually real life meeting this person, because they can catch things that maybe if I'm, in love and that euphoric feeling, that I'm not maybe paying attention to some things I should be paying attention to. So I feel like I really like that combined with sometimes we're really not ready as we're trying to heal, or if on a spectrum of ready, we're maybe more at a 3 or 4 instead of 10 all the way totally ready. And that's okay. And it's okay to put on she called it the shirt. I'm ready is like a t-shirt you put on and take off, because sometimes we are a lot more ready depending on what's going on, but it's not something to stress about or be worried about. It's just realizing that as long as we're working on us and having that expectation that just because we're on a dating site doesn't mean it's going to happen right away. Just because we're on a dating site and we're not really ready because we're still trying to heal from a trauma of losing a spouse or divorce, then it's okay to be at different stages of ready, and it's okay to move on that spectrum of ready. And that brought a lot of comfort to me, because that's where I'm at a lot of times. But that mindset of I can be real and I can be positive and I can improve me is very empowering. I appreciate that.
Great, thank you. Jocelyn.
So to go back to about a couple minutes ago, one of the things you're saying is that she needed like a base. I do think it's really important to not use a person. So some people are like, I am ready. And what they're actually saying is that I need a life preserver, right?
Yes.
Like they're drowning and they're looking for that person to like, we need to be able to kind of swim on our own, right? So you can actively, I think if you know what you have to offer, that's really important to being ready. Like instead of just saying, what can you give me? Saying, this is what I have to offer. What can you, and recognizing that you're ready to grow and that you're going to have to grow, instead of where will you meet me? Like, I don't want to change. This is how my life is. I like this. What are you willing to do for me? Like, and I think we have all had experiences, like, especially the women. I can't speak for the guys, and I'm sorry, guys. Maybe you probably don't want me speaking for you, to be honest. Where, we were dating somebody, and they're like, well, I do this and this and this, and I need somebody who does this and this and this. And they had, like, this laundry list of all of the things that they don't want to change that weren't really healthy or, great things about them that we could just... Like, we have to be ready to grow and to know that it's going to be hard, but it'll be worth it.
I think being ready to grow is a good way to put it. And there's a segue into this quote from the article again. I think this is from from Schwartz Gottman. All right, so it says, that's one of those all-American myths that you have to pull yourself up by your own bootstraps, that you have to be really strong, healthy, and independent in order to be capable of a successful relationship. And it's absolutely not true, Schwartz Gottman says. In some cases, relationships can help with coping with things like depression or PTSD. People are never in perfect condition for a relationship. People are always bringing in old baggage and past experiences that are painful, that are part of the beauty and truth of their nature. With all of that, relationships can be even deeper and more meaningful. So it seems like you have to find that sweet spot where you know who you are, you appreciate who you are, you don't need someone, but you recognize that you don't need to be absolutely in tip-top condition to have a good relationship.
Yeah, I think it goes on just with...
And this is Patty.
Yeah, are you emotionally needy? You know what I mean? Have you healed your wounds first? If you've healed your wounds, and yes, I would think you are, but like Jocelyn said, if you're looking for a life preserver, that's not going to come. You have to save yourself. You have to be willing to work on yourself first. asking someone else to step in the picture and heal what someone else has done in the past that you didn't work through before is too much for another person to deal with. And they usually the relationship ends up failing at that point. You have to do a lot of work before. So the article says, not being ready, but I think if you haven't done any soul searching, if you haven't worked on yourself, then you could definitely not be ready. And it depends however it is. If you're not a person who inward thinks, is willing to take inventory on yourself, to sit there and say, okay, I had this relationship, I was married for so many years. Yes, we got divorced, this person, let's say they cheated or whatever have you, but before that happened, what part did I take part in the relationship? What part did I do, did I contribute to the relationship not working? Because everyone has contributed, whether they like to deal with that or not. You know what I mean? So I think it's come to those terms. How do you really take a stock of your relationship on what you did to contribute to your divorce? Because if not, patterns are patterns, you're going to keep the same pattern going.
Yes. However, I want to add that sometimes you don't know whether or not you've made any progress on that issue until you're in another relationship. And Steve and I have talked a lot about that too. And that's one of the reasons why I did this 30-day thing. I hate to call it a practice relationship, but it really was. And I think that a lot of times we need to be willing to go ahead and take a chance, because we're not talking about marriage. We're just talking about a relationship. So why not, I see all these hands going up, it's so great. Why not just jump in and say, I know I'm working on this, and share it with the person you're going out with, when it gets to that point. I'm working on this. Let them know that. And so that you guys can help each other out. Now, if you discover that your issues don't mesh with the other person's issues, then, thank you for playing, and then you move on. But we all have them. Jocelyn, I'm going to go with you first.
I do think, too, one of the problems that I've been having lately is there are things that I want to do. There are things that I know I need to make better about myself. But from a resources standpoint, I can't, because I'm tapped, right? Like, in my priorities list, I have, like, my daughter, keeping a job, making sure that my house isn't clean, or is clean, so I don't want to, like, stab people when I come home. Like, you have, like, this list of things that you need to have done, like, to take care of yourself. And then there's the list of things that you really want to do, but you can't. And right now I am tapped, right? Like, and I need, like, a partner, right? Somebody who's, like, going to make dinner once in a while so I can go to the gym, or somebody, it's more about, like, division of labor and less about, and I also need someone who can point out maybe the rough edges that I don't know exist. I'm sure that there's more about myself I can fix, but I don't know what it is until I have somebody that I can kind of bounce off of to find out what those are.
Yeah, well, that's the whole point of relationships, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the earth was created for us to have relationships with each other. And so a relationship is the best place. It's supposed to be the place where you can really become the best self, because you have someone there to help you rub off those rough edges and help you not stab people, right? Mm-hmm. We're going to go with Kristen next, and then we're going to go over to Drew, and then to McDreamy. Kristen.
So you said you'd hate to call it a practice relationship, but that's what it was. But isn't that the whole point of dating? Isn't all dating a practice relationship until you decide to get married?
You're right, and sometimes those can turn into the marriage relationship. But I guess I sometimes feel bad, like in the church, we're too focused on getting married, and so some of us are hesitant to date someone that we don't think we would marry. But that's kind of stupid, really. I mean, I tend to be too worried about I'm going to hurt the other person. But like my counselor says, you're not a caretaker of any other grown-up person. And everybody that goes into a relationship knows there's a potential to get hurt. So more of us should be more willing to jump into stuff, it seems like. Did I cut you off, Kristen?
Well, just one other thing is that I don't know when or how all these unrealistic expectations grew up around a relationship, like if it's too many romance movies or what, that it's just supposed to be perfect and blissful and there's no problems, and if there's one problem then the whole thing is doomed, and it's just lies. So how do we combat that?
That's a really good point, because it does seem like we are at a society where we want to give up too easily on stuff, whereas marriage used to be the place that you knew you were safe to work on the stuff because the person was going to stick with you forever. I mean, obviously that doesn't include things like abuse. Nobody's going to stick around that's being abused in a relationship. That's not it. But getting through tough times together is part of what the relationship's about. And I'm going to go with Drew, McDreamy, Jocelyn, and then Emily. Drew.
Okay, great. Good discussion. There's a lot of good things here that have been talked about. I agree with the idea that we need to unpack our baggage. that we need to heal from our past life. But there's also a great quote about in the article about mentally, about when you're at, sorry, let's see. Here it is. Mentally, you really have to be on the ball. This is about readiness to date. Mentally, you really have to be on the ball, ready to resolve both personal issues and relationship issues. Things that you can't do outside of a relationship.
Yes.
That you were mentioning, Annette. So we need to be prepared to go forward with those, realizing they're going to happen, and expect them and not be afraid of them.
Good. Thank you.
You cannot, continuing the quote, you can't be someone that shuts down or lashes out during arguments or when confronted. You need to be ready to be vulnerable. And I would add to that, ready to show up and be there, whatever the issue is.
Yes, awesome. We're coming back to the vulnerability. I want to emphasize that because that was one of the things that I circled when I was reading this. If you haven't listened to the Daring Greatly episode, go listen to the Daring Greatly episode, but it talks about being willing to be vulnerable in a relationship and to allow your relationship partner to see, let them develop a level of trust first. Develop that trust first, but once that trust is developed, allowing them to see what your weaknesses are and allowing them to show you their weaknesses so that you can work on them together and see if this is something that you would be willing to take on as a lifetime job, because that's what it becomes, right? I would rather have some guy know well ahead of time what he would be getting into with me than to get married and have him be like, well, I didn't know that you love watching Netflix and binging on murder mystery shows. I wouldn't have done that, or that's just giving you one of my nice little issues. But this show is too light and airy for me to get into some deeper stuff. But people should allow the person they're dating to see what they're made of, so you guys can work on those things together, and then know whether or not that's something that either one of you wants to handle. McDreamy.
Well, there's a lot of stuff that we have discussed since I had my comments, but I just, being someone that's never been married and has wanted that to be a part of my life for a long time, I've learned that as I've interacted with other people, not in a romantic relationship, but with people at church and work and in the community, that all of those relationships are building my ability to interact with someone special, right?
Yeah.
So, and then I think a lot about my relationship with the Savior, and lately what I've been asking myself is, do I really trust the Savior? Am I really willing to lay it all out on the line and say, you're in charge? I guess I've got, I own my own business. I like calling the shots. I don't like leaving other people in charge. And so there's a huge element of trust for me, even with the Savior. And so what I've realized is that I can only be ready, I can only prepare myself so that when that special someone comes along, I'm willing to embark in that journey, however long it might be, right? But that's really been an eye-opener for me lately is, am I building my other relationships and getting that interpersonal practice and building real meaningful relationships? I think that's one of the reasons that the church went from home teaching to ministering, is that it's not about going and doing a lesson. It's about building a meaningful relationship with the person you serve. So, and then my dad always gave me great advice. I'll end on this. He said, every relationship's going to end one of two ways. It's either going to end or it's going to be the one that doesn't. And you don't know which one that's going to be until you figure it out. So, and that's really frustrating for all of us, of course.
Yeah, because we all want to know. Who was next? Jocelyn? Sorry.
There's so I listen to songs a lot and there's this song by Sting called Fortress Around Your Heart, where he talks about laying minefields for people. Mm-hmm. I think especially as we get older, we all have our minefields. We don't know what they are until somebody steps on it. And so, and I have found myself, and the thing is until you're in the relationship, until you get that far, I am really good in early stage relationships. But then we reach a point where I haven't done it very often. And then it is a minefield. They'll say something and I'll get really upset. And it has been difficult for me because a lot of times they'll say, I can't talk to you about that right now. I'm really upset about what you just said, but I don't know why. And I need to step back and think about it. And I will come back and talk to you in a little bit. And I have to think, what happened? Why? How did that why am I feeling so strongly about something that shouldn't really have upset me as much? And so I think one of the things that makes us ready is if we're willing to step back and think of that, say, nope, this is where I am. I'm upset. Meet me here. Like, we have to be able to stop and say, is this rational? Is this the same person? Is this, and that it's not whether or not we're messed up, because we're all messed up at this point. Like, it is how we deal with the things that upset us and how we deal with those bumps that makes us ready. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Like, is our attitude, is the growth mentality, like a growth mindset, instead of no, this is who I am and suck it up.
Yeah, I think if you feel like you're not ready and you haven't recently gone through a divorce or a death or some kind of loss, then you might want to start asking yourself, why is it that I don't feel ready? Because whenever I start thinking about dating, some anxieties come up. And so I have to sit there and go, what are these? What are these anxieties coming up, and what do I need to do to deal with them? And I've already told my counselor, when I find a good guy, I'm going to be calling you right away to get in, because I know as soon as I meet someone that seems like a good possibility for me, I start freaking out. Mm-hmm. And so I think recognizing that, but being willing to move forward anyway, if that means you have to go see the counselor after every date, do it. Because eventually you're going to grow a lot, and you'll be able to get into that, move forward into a relationship that doesn't end. It would be nice to find one of those. All right, Emily.
I feel like I can often self-sabotage because I do start to say, oh no, I jump way ahead in the phases of a relationship to like phase 3 or 4, and when I'm not even there yet, I don't even know if they're interested in me. And so I found when it comes to wanting to practice skills in a dating relationship, and being friends is a really great place to just start. Easy breezy, fun, no pressure, no commitment. Just be, be together, do fun things together. Those things can also be practiced, like you said, Todd, with like
McDreamy.
Oh, McDreamy, yes, sorry. With all kinds of relationships, family, co-workers. These skills can still be practiced, but for me, expectation and opportunities come into play when I find a good counselor, a dating coach or counselor, a therapist, either way, however it works out, someone that that communicates well with me and that I am able to understand it and communicate well with them. And it took a while to find a couple that really work well for me. I have one for dating, I have one for post-divorce situations, and then I have one for parenting, because those are all different things. And so I've just absorbed the flavor of how this person communicates and the things that they have gained through their experience and readings in different ways. And so I found different counselors to be helpful in different settings for different reasons. But having that expectation of that counselors has talked to lots of people, and when I say, well, this is what I'm worried about in this situation, I don't think I'm ready, to realize that the article is very true in saying that it can be a way of trying to put off or not dig deep into, why am I really feeling afraid? Why am I trying to self-sabotage? And so having that perspective of a counselor where they meet with a lot of people and say, oh, this is very common, and this is what a lot of people do to work through it, or just have that mindset of it's a non-issue, just don't worry about that, and go with that perspective of pursue your passions. Just go have fun. Just try it. The worst it's going to get is where you're at already anyway without it, so just try the experience and see where it gets you.
Right, and that reminds me of what you said about people thinking they're not ready. One of the things the article said is that one of the problems that people have with putting it off, saying they're not ready until they've got their degree or until they're financially stable or they're in a career or whatever, is they end up putting it off so long that then they start feeling like they're not ready to do it. They can't do it. This says like going to the dentist. If you put that off too long, it becomes more daunting over time. And I feel that same way too. If there's like a really big gap between dates for me, I start thinking, do I even remember how to do this? Do I even know, how do I act on a date? And so the next time I go out, it's going to be anxiety again. Whereas if I was just, kept doing this, having a date regularly, which for me is like every 3 or 4 months, I guess. But at least if I can look back and say, oh, I remember my last date, it's not such a big deal. But if you put it off and put it off and put it off, then you start feeling like you're never going to be ready because you don't have any practice with it. Yes, Jennifer.
So one of the things that I was thinking about, and that kind of ties in with what you're saying, is that if for those of us who maybe were in a marriage relationship within the last year, I think I'm the only one. During that time, I still had to function in the relationship or tried. So when you're single, you have the luxury of choosing. And once you're in a relationship, when things are inconvenient or when you don't have time or when you need to focus on other things, you still have to put that time and energy into the relationship. And frankly, that's one of the reasons that my marriage failed, is because it wasn't nurtured enough. So I think that's something to be aware of, is that any relationship that we have will take time. And I really like what McDreamy said, because I think it is true. I think as we grow our relationships with others, and not necessarily dating relationships, but they can be relationships with friends, with family, with anyone, coworkers, anybody, we can enrich ourselves and we can become far more proficient as we nurture those relationships. If we're giving in those relationships, we'll be able to give in other ones. And I think that's important. One of the books that you talked about in your book, Annette, and Steve, I don't really know who brought it up, but it's by Bruce Fisher, and it's called Rebuilding. Yeah, and it's a really good book. I've been rereading that one. A friend of mine gave it to me a while ago. And I really am a big believer in transition relationships. Not to say that you need to date 20 or 50 or 100 people before you find the right person, but to know that the first person you date probably will not be the person that you wind up marrying, and that even if you're kind of fresh out of a marriage or shortly after the death of a spouse, that you're going to go through changes, and the other person may be in that position too. So you'll have to kind of change together. But I still like that idea that you can go into maybe a dating situation with, this can be a transition relationship, and if it doesn't work, it's okay. I'm still going to learn something from it, good or bad. Mm-hmm. And if it helps me to grow, it better prepares me for something good down the road. So that to me is really helpful.
That's a really good point. I like that you bring up transition relationships, because a lot of us are going to have those or have had them. And that doesn't mean that you're a bad person because it didn't work out with that person. Even if you go into it knowing this is probably just a transition relationship or practice relationship. Yes, Jocelyn?
As Jason Mraz says, you're going to, win some or learn some?
Win some or learn some.
Yeah, there's a song, he says, so you're going to win something, like win some or learn some. Either it's going to work out or you're going to learn something. So either way, it's a win-win.
I like that. That's really good.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So I think that the main lesson that I take away from this article and this discussion is that if you've lost someone through divorce or death, then you need that healing period. And I think Steve and I agreed that after a divorce, you need to wait about a year.
At least.
And also it depends on how long you were married. Yeah, Steve, I know. I said 6 months in the book, and then I agreed with you in the book as well. I just read it, okay? Yes, Jocelyn.
I think there was a rule that somebody came out with. They said you need 6 months for every year that you were married.
Yeah.
So it could actually, if you were married for 20 years, I mean, maybe 10 years is a little, but like you need a while.
Yes.
It's going to take a while before...
I've heard that too, actually, and that makes me glad I was only married for less than 9 years, because I'm at that halfway point. Yes, Emily.
So I've heard that too, and that's something that's, like, I look to how it felt concerning to me, like, really, I'm going to wait that long before I'm really healed, but I can still be growing and working on a relationship, whether it's a transitional relationship or not, in the meantime, and that's okay. And I get this confidence in this comment from observing how 12 apostles, church leadership, how when a spouse passes away, some of them do take longer and some of them don't. But to hear a recent story that Wendy Nelson gave about how did she know that she was going to marry Russell Nelson. How did she know that? Well, it was a conflicting thing within her. It sounded like, from what she said, that she was thinking, oh no, when he said he wanted to get to know me better, she thought, okay, I really need to take this and pray about this, because I was thinking no. But as she took some time just by herself, away from work and away from family, she felt like, yeah, she got confirmation that this is what I need to do. And she did explain the trauma of he was still going through trauma from losing his spouse. She was having to give up a business that she built. And so there's a lot that went on in that, but the willingness to work together, the growth mindset, I mean, no doubt she's had a lot of training with her exposure and education and learning and experiences in life to that point with the degrees she has in her business to be open to that kind of situation.
Thank you, Jocelyn, and then I'm going to wrap it up. Yes.
One of the things that I did like, 'cause I listened to that same thing. One of the things that she said that I thought was really interesting is she said that I needed to pursue this relationship possibility. She did not say it was a guarantee. And one of the things that I think I've recently learned is I've had several promptings that there are people that I should be interested in, and it hasn't worked out. And I was like, what's that about? I was mad. And the fact is that Heavenly Father's saying, yes, that is an appropriate person. You would do well with that person. That doesn't mean that they are going to decide that they want you. And He will never take away our account. So, I mean, I guess from people that are getting discouraged because they feel like they had a prompting or they had like something like that, it's only a possibility because it also depends on what the other person wants.
Yeah, darn agency gets in the way every time.
It's such a pain.
I know I was talking to a friend earlier today, and I told her we were going to be doing this podcast, and we talked about why is it that sometimes we've had promptings about marrying someone that later that marriage ended in divorce. And her idea or her theory was that for one reason is to bring kids into the world. And another reason might be to just give you both the opportunity to make it work. And it could work. But Heavenly Father, of course, knows the end from the beginning, and He knew where it was going to go. Like I look at my marriage and I think, yes, I had 3 beautiful girls that came out of it. And had I not married him, because if I had known where it was going to go, I don't know if I could have done it. But Heavenly Father wants to bring children into the world. And so sometimes He allows marriages to happen that are going to bring pain. And it also was an opportunity for both of us. We both had our agency, and I'm not going to say who made what decisions, but obviously some bad decisions were made, and so the marriage had to end. But that doesn't mean that there wasn't something good that came out of it. And so a lot of times we'll receive those promptings to give 2 people a chance, and maybe sometimes to bring children into the world. Sorry guys, I've got to wrap it up. See, this is what's wonderful about having these groups is that everybody wants to talk. But I don't want to, we're going to move on to another topic here. But I want to thank you all for this discussion. It's been wonderful. I feel like we should all, as singles, work on being more willing to be ready for a relationship. And if we feel like we're not, asking the Lord, what is it I need to work on? Go to a counselor. What is it I need to work on? And then go ahead and be willing to go into a relationship and say, I'm working on these things. Can we work on them together? What do you have to work on? Let's work on them together. And not allow things that are not important to keep us from moving forward. I was going to say, and I say this in the name of Jesus Christ, amen. So thank you for listening to LDS Unmarried Life. Please go to AnnetteTalks.com where LDS singles gather.
I'm gonna bloom where I'm planted. I won't take things for granted. Come what may, bring it on. I'm gonna love it.